He slid the divorce papers across our dining room table like he was closing a business deal. 7 years of marriage ended with a signature. My younger sister, my own blood, stood in the doorway of the home I'd decorated, one hand resting possessively on her hip, the other cradling a champagne glass. Already celebrating, already victorious. They wanted me broken, desperate, erased from the narrative they were writing together. I was 5 months pregnant with his child, so I picked up the pen and signed without reading a single word. No tears, no screaming, no begging. What did I do next? Let's just say the universe has impeccable timing, and the final twist will absolutely blow your mind. But before we get into how everything exploded, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single moment of how this unfolds. And stick around until the end, because what happened to them became a cautionary tale whispered in boardrooms across 3 continents. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. You know that feeling when you're living what looks like a dream from the outside, but somewhere deep inside, you know you're actually sleepwalking through your own life? That was me. My name doesn't matter anymore. Not the name I had back then, the one I changed to match his, the one I thought would define my future. What matters is who I became after everything fell apart. But let me start from the beginning, when I still believed in fairy tales and happy endings. I was a tech consultant, and I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. The kind of exceptional that had Fortune 500 companies competing for my time, offering packages that would make your head spin. I specialized in digital infrastructure for emerging markets, building technological bridges in places the industry had written off. I had clients on 3 continents, a reputation that opened doors before I even knocked, and I was building something real, something meaningful, something entirely mine. Then I met him at an industry gala in New York. Tall, devastatingly handsome, with a kind of confidence that only comes from generational wealth. He owned a commercial real estate development empire, the kind that builds those gleaming glass towers that reshape city skylines. When he pursued me, I felt chosen, special. He made me feel like I was the only woman in the world who could truly understand his vision, his ambitions, his carefully constructed world. We got married within 18 months. Looking back now, I should have seen the red flags waving like banners in a hurricane. But love, or what I thought was love, has this dangerous way of making you ignore your gut, silence your intuition, dismiss the warning signs your body is screaming at you to notice. His family tolerated me at best. His mother would smile at me during those agonizing family dinners, but her eyes were always cold, calculating, and measuring. His father barely acknowledged my presence, treating me like expensive furniture his son had acquired. And his friends, they treated me like an accessory, something pretty and accomplished he'd picked up along the way to complete his image. I started making sacrifices without even recognizing them as sacrifices. When he needed to expand his business operations internationally, I turned down the Dubai project, a 3-year contract that would have established me as one of the leading voices in global tech infrastructure. I told myself it was temporary, that I could rebuild my career anywhere, that marriage meant compromise. I moved continents for him, set up our new home in 3 different cities over 4 years, learned to entertain his business partners with the right wine pairings and interesting but not threatening conversation. I played the role of the perfect wife with Oscar-worthy dedication. Slowly, piece by piece, I felt myself disappearing. The woman who used to command boardrooms started planning dinner parties instead. The consultant who solved multi-million-dollar problems was now solving the problem of which art pieces would impress his investors. My work calls became shorter. My projects became smaller. My world became smaller. But I didn't complain. I loved him. Or, at least I loved who I thought he was, who he'd presented himself to be during those early days when he was winning me over. The late nights at the office became more frequent. The distance between us grew wider, more unbridgeable. We stopped talking about real things, my work, my dreams, my fears. We stopped laughing together. We stopped touching each other with any genuine feeling. Intimacy became scheduled, mechanical, something checked off a list. I told myself lies that sounded like wisdom. Every marriage goes through rough patches. He's just stressed about the new development project. This is what mature love looks like. I told myself stories to make the truth easier to swallow. Then came that Thursday afternoon that shattered everything. I'd had a doctor's appointment that morning, the anatomy scan, where we were supposed to find out if we were having a boy or girl. He'd promised to come. His assistant called 30 minutes before to say he couldn't make it. Emergency meeting. I went alone, found out we were having a daughter, and cried in the parking lot because I had no one to share the news with. I decided to go home early, to tell him in person, to maybe create one of those movie moments where everything feels right again for just a second. I walked into our house, our home, the place where I'd tried so desperately hard to build a life, and I heard laughter coming from upstairs. Her laughter, light and carefree and achingly familiar. His laughter, genuine in a way I hadn't heard directed at me in over 2 years. I stood at the bottom of those stairs for what felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to turn around, walk back out, pretend I never came home early, keep living in the comfortable ignorance I'd wrapped around myself like armor. But my feet carried me up anyway. Each step felt like walking toward my own execution. I opened our bedroom door, the master bedroom I designed, with the custom wallpaper I'd selected, the sheets I'd ordered from Italy, and there they were. My husband, my sister, not frantic, not guilty, not even startled. They were comfortable, like this was routine, like this was their space, and I was the intruder. He looked at me with this expression I'll never forget as long as I live. Not guilt, not remorse, not even a surprise. Just annoyance, like I was interrupting something important, like I'd violated some unspoken agreement by coming home to my own house. My sister, my younger sister, the one I'd helped through college, the one I'd given my first apartment to when she moved to the city, the one I'd introduced to my professional network, pulled the sheet around herself. But she was smiling. Actually smiling. That's when I knew. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't some moment of weakness or temporary insanity. This was a planned takeover, a strategic coup, and I'd been too blind to see it coming. "We need to talk," he said, like those 4 words could somehow make this moment normal, like we were going to discuss weekend plans instead of the obliteration of everything I believed in. I just stood there, watching him get dressed, watching her sit in my bed like she belonged there, like she'd earned the right to be there. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't collapse. I just felt numb, like my body understood something my mind was still desperately trying to process. We went downstairs. She followed us, wearing one of my robes, a silk one I'd bought in Tokyo. The audacity of it all almost made me laugh. Almost. He poured himself a scotch, the expensive one we'd been saving for special occasions, didn't offer me one, and sat down like he was about to chair a board meeting. Clinical, detached, efficient. Then he told me the truth. All of it. With the same tone he used to discuss quarterly projections. They'd been together for 8 months. She'd been staying in our home when I traveled for work, sleeping in our bed, wearing my clothes, living my life like she was trying it on for size. This wasn't about love or passion or uncontrollable attraction. This was strategic. My sister had connections to a massive investment consortium through her new friend group, wealthy families with old money and new ambitions. They wanted in on his next development project, a $1 billion smart city initiative. But they wanted the right kind of family structure for their investment. Young, fertile, connected to their world. And I was the obstacle. "Look," he said, leaning back like he was explaining something to a child. "This was never about forever with you. You were perfect for where I was 7 years ago. Smart, successful, impressive enough to show off. But I've evolved. My needs have changed." He gestured to my sister like she was a product he was showcasing. "She understands the world I'm building now." My sister, sitting on my couch in my home, wearing my robe, had the audacity to say, "You were always the most successful one, the smart one, the one everyone admired. For once, let me have something. He loves me. I really love me. Not the way he loved you. Out of convenience. Those words should have destroyed me. Maybe they would have if I hadn't already felt so hollowed out, so empty. He slid an envelope across the coffee table. Divorce papers. Already prepared. Already reviewed by a team of lawyers I'd never met. He'd been planning this for months. Sign these, he said. Take what you came into the marriage with and leave quietly. Don't make this difficult. If you fight me on this, if you try to make this ugly, I'll make sure no one in this industry ever works with you again. I have connections everywhere, investors, board members, industry leaders. You'll be finished professionally. And custody of that baby? He gestured dismissively at my pregnant belly. I have lawyers who can prove you're unstable, that you abandoned your career, that you're financially dependent on me. You'll be lucky to get supervised visitation. I picked up the papers with shaking hands and read through them slowly. Everything went to him. The house, the cars, the investment accounts we'd built together, the art collection, even the furniture I'd selected and paid for with money from my consulting work. I got nothing except my personal belongings and my car. 7 years of marriage reduced to whatever I could fit in my sedan. The prenuptial agreement, the one his lawyers had assured me was just a formality, was weaponized against me. Every clause designed to leave me with nothing. Here's what they didn't know. What nobody knew. While I was playing the role of the perfect wife, while I was stepping back from my consulting career, while I was making myself smaller to fit into his world, I was also building something extraordinary in the shadows. 3 years into our marriage, I'd started coding again, something I used to love before consulting took over my life. Late nights when he was supposedly at the office closing deals, I was working too. Just something different. Something that belonged entirely to me. I created a platform, a blockchain-based digital infrastructure system designed specifically for underserved markets in developing nations. It solved problems that traditional tech companies had ignored for decades: banking access, supply chain transparency, digital identity for the unbanked, micro-investment opportunities for local entrepreneurs. I'd seen too many brilliant people with world-changing ideas get shut down because they didn't fit the Western investment model, because they didn't have the right connections, because they weren't part of the club. I built it quietly, kept it completely separate from anything connected to him. Different bank accounts, different business entity, different legal team, different name. I used my grandmother's maiden name. It was mine. Fully, completely, undeniably mine. The morning of the day he filed for divorce, the actual morning, while he was meeting with his lawyers to finalize papers to erase me, I was in a conference room across town signing an $800 million contract with a global tech consortium. $800 million. The signing was confidential, with a 72-hour media embargo while regulatory approvals were finalized. The money went into trusts and offshore accounts he knew nothing about. Accounts his forensic accountants would never find because they were established before our marriage, in structures that were legally untouchable. While he thought I was dependent on him, planning how to survive on whatever scraps his lawyers would allow me, I was already worth more than him and everyone he knew combined. So when I sat there in my living room, reading those divorce papers designed to leave me with nothing, watching them both lean forward eagerly waiting for me to break, I had to physically bite the inside of my cheek to keep from smiling. I picked up the pen. Slowly. Deliberately. I watched his face. He expected begging. Tears. Desperate negotiations. Threats of exposure. Something. My sister leaned forward, practically vibrating with anticipation, eager to watch me shatter. I signed every single page, without hesitation. Fast, clean, decisive. The confusion on their faces was almost worth everything I'd been through. He actually asked, "That's it? No fight? No lawyers?" I looked at him, then really looked at him clearly for maybe the first time in years. Without the filter of love or hope or delusion. I saw a small, insecure man who needed to take things from others to feel powerful, who needed to diminish others to feel tall. "You're not worth the energy," I said. Simple. Calm. True. I gathered the papers, handed them back to him, and walked upstairs to pack. I took my clothes, my laptop, the one with all my real work on it, my grandmother's jewelry, my dignity, everything else, all that expensive furniture, the designer dishes, the art I'd carefully curated, meant nothing. It was just props in a play I was done performing in. As I loaded my car, I could hear them inside, already celebrating. Champagne glasses clinking. Her high-pitched laughter echoed through the windows. His voice, lighter than I'd heard it in years, making plans for their future in the space I'd just vacated. They thought they'd won. They thought I was leaving broken and desperate, probably heading to some friend's couch to cry myself to sleep. Let them think about it. The truth would reveal itself in exactly 72 hours. I drove to a hotel, a nice one, not some cheap motel, and checked in under my business name. Then I called my real lawyer, the one who'd been handling the contract negotiations, and told her to execute phase 2 of our exit strategy. No social media posts. No calls to mutual friends. No drama. Just silence. I disappeared from their world completely, like I'd never existed. For 3 days, I slept better than I had in years. I ate meals I actually tasted. I worked on the laptop, finalizing details of the platform launch. I went to prenatal yoga. I found an apartment, a beautiful one with a nursery that got morning sunlight. On day 4, the media embargo lifted. The news hit every major tech publication simultaneously. Mystery founder secures $800 million deal for revolutionary infrastructure platform. My name, my real name, my grandmother's name, was suddenly everywhere. His phone started ringing off the hook. Mutual acquaintances, industry contacts, investors who'd brushed me off at his dinner parties suddenly wanted to talk to him about me. About whether he'd known, whether he'd invested, whether he could make an introduction. I didn't answer his calls. There were 37 of them in the first week alone. I was busy anyway, meeting with my new team, hiring brilliant women from around the world, expanding the platform into 47 countries, doing interviews with international media who wanted to know the story of the tech genius who'd been hiding in plain sight. When they asked about my personal life, I smiled and said, I prefer to keep my focus on the work. 3 months later, the first domino fell. His primary investor, connected to my sister's new social circle, started conducting routine family background checks for major stakeholders. It was standard practice for 9-figure investments. They wanted to know everything about the people they were trusting with their money. What they found in his company's financial records made them very uncomfortable. Nothing explicitly illegal, just unethical. Creative accounting. Contracts that exploited small minority-owned subcontractors. Environmental shortcuts. Labor violations that had been quietly settled. Deals with shell companies that couldn't quite be traced. The kind of things that stay buried as long as nobody's looking too closely. But once they started looking, they couldn't stop seeing. The investor pulled out. $300 million gone overnight. Within 2 weeks, his other major clients started leaving. Quietly, professionally, switching to competitors. A federal investigation opened into some of his business dealings. The media, always hungry for a fallen empire story, picked it up. Real estate mogul under investigation for fraud. Smart city project collapses amid financial irregularities. Investors flee sinking development empire. His company hemorrhaged money and reputation simultaneously. His fancy friends stopped returning calls. His social invitations dried up. And my sister? The woman he'd left me for, the strategic relationship that was supposed to unlock billions in investment? She left him the moment his bank balance dipped below 8 figures. Moved on to his former business partner, the one who'd quietly bought out his failing projects for pennies on the dollar. Turns out strategic relationships only work when the strategy pays off. My phone kept ringing. His number. Over and over. I never answered. I blocked it eventually. What was there to say? 6 months after I signed those divorce papers, I ran into him at a coffee shop near my office. Pure coincidence. Or maybe the universe has a sense of humor darker than we give it credit for. He looked terrible. Older, haggard, defeated. The confidence that used to radiate off him had evaporated, leaving behind something hollow and desperate. He approached me carefully, like I might run or cause a scene. "Can we talk?" he asked. His voice was different, smaller. I should have said no, should have walked away. But curiosity, or maybe the need for closure, made me stay. We sat down. He ordered black coffee. Couldn't afford the expensive drinks anymore, apparently. He told me everything. How my sister had left him for someone wealthier the moment his problem started. How his company was filing for bankruptcy. How his so-called friends had all disappeared. How he'd lost the house, the cars, the lifestyle. How he was living in a rental apartment and driving a used car. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. "Did you plan this? Did you destroy me on purpose?" He actually looked hopeful, like intentional revenge would somehow be better than random karma, like it would mean I still cared enough to want to hurt him. I could have lied. Could have let him think I was some criminal mastermind who'd orchestrated his downfall with precision. But the truth was simpler. And somehow more powerful. "No," I said, meeting his eyes directly. "I just bet on myself instead of you. Everything that happened to you, you did to yourself. I just stopped collateral damage in your life." He sat there processing that, trying to find a way to make it my fault anyway. Then he said something that almost sounded like regret. "You were always the strategist behind everything that worked in my business. I didn't realize that until you were gone. I need your help. Please. For our daughter's sake." Too little. Too late. The recognition I'd craved during our marriage meant nothing now. Less than nothing. I finished my coffee and stood up to leave. He grabbed my hand desperately. "Is there any chance we could?" I pulled away gently before he could finish that sentence. "No," I said. "There's not. Take care of yourself. I mean that." And I did mean it. Not with love or hope or the possibility of reconciliation, but with the kind of distant goodwill you'd have for a stranger you once knew. Walking out of that coffee shop, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because of his suffering, that brought me no joy, but because I was finally completely free. Free from needing his approval. Free from seeking validation from someone who couldn't see my value. Free from the prison of a marriage that had required me to be smaller, quieter, less than what I was. Free to be fully myself. Today, 2 years after that signature, my company has revolutionized digital access in 73 countries. We've helped 5 million people gain banking access, created opportunities for 200,000 entrepreneurs, changed actual lives in measurable, meaningful ways. I've been featured in Time magazine's list of most influential tech leaders, spoken at the UN about digital infrastructure as a human right, built something that actually matters. My daughter is 18 months old now. Healthy, happy, brilliant. She'll grow up knowing that her mother chose herself, chose dignity, chose power over pity. She'll grow up knowing that her worth is non-negotiable. I sleep well at night. Not in expensive Italian sheets in some showcase mansion, but in peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you earned everything you have, that nothing was given to you that can be taken away. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about what he did. If I hate him. If I hate my sister. The truth is, I don't feel much of anything toward either of them anymore. They're chapters in my story, not even particularly long ones. Not the whole book. His betrayal wasn't the end of my life. It was the beginning of my real one. The one where I stopped performing someone else's version of who I should be and started living as fully myself. The one where I stopped shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed for me and started building my own. The one where I chose myself first, without apology, without guilt, without shame. The best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so completely yourself, so fully realized in your purpose, that the people who hurt you become irrelevant. Not because you've forced yourself to forget them, but because you've built something so meaningful that their opinion simply doesn't matter anymore. It's finding peace not in their suffering, but in your own extraordinary becoming. He wanted to erase me, to reduce me to nothing so he could feel bigger. Instead, he freed me to discover I never needed any of it. Not his money, not his name, not his world. Not his validation. I had everything I needed inside myself all along. I just had to lose everything else to find it. If this story resonated with you, hit that subscribe button right now. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had someone underestimate you only to prove them spectacularly wrong? Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't defined by anyone else, not by who stays, not by who leaves, not by who sees their value or who's too blind to recognize it. Remember, the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's becoming so successful, so fulfilled, so completely yourself that you forget they ever had the power to hurt you. The greatest victory isn't destroying your enemies. It's becoming so extraordinary that their existence becomes irrelevant to your story. I'll see you in the next one.